Hang out on air. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Chang with Maker Ed, and I'm delighted to be here today with Robert Pronovost with Empowerment, previously with Ravenswood City School District and other side positions. We're thrilled to be with him today on our Ask a Maker Educator series, and we're going to dive right in. Robert, would you like to introduce yourself?
All right, yeah, so thank you, Stephanie. I'm so excited to be a part of the Ask a Maker Educator series. I am, as Stephanie said, now consulting on my own through Empowerment, which stands for it stands for empowering learning through making innovation and technology. And through that, I'm working a little over half-time with the San Mateo County Office of Education, and also working with some other school districts in the Bay Area and community colleges such as KCI, Foothill College.
Super cool. Awesome. It's really exciting to see you take it far and beyond all of the work that you started. I remember us first chatting in a variety of different settings, but really getting to know each other back in 2013. And I believe you were leading up a lot of STEM efforts at the Ravenswood City School District then. And I know you really spearheaded an enormous effort, which I think is now the Ravenswood Makerspace Collaborative, if I'm right, to design, build, and establish a ton that is very scientific of makerspaces in all the schools there. So I'd love to get into that a little bit because I think a lot of folks listening in and watching this either live or later will be really interested in understanding what you did, what you accomplished, and some of the paths you took to get there. So I'm super curious, what really were your goals when you started that gigantic but very amazing initiative back in 2013?
Well, I had been a teacher in Ravenswood before that. I taught at Bellhaven Community School, and really my ultimate goal was to bring back the excitement and creativity that had been lost amongst my students. So we had had such a focus on high stakes testing, and all we can do in the class is reading and writing and math, that we actually barely even had a half hour for science. And usually that science had to be read from the book, answering questions, multiple choice. So I really wanted to be able to bring back that creativity that was missing, at least from our school, but now it seems like it was missing from a lot of schools around us.
That's fantastic. I think we hear that a lot from educators, is that there's a reason that you became a teacher and an educator to influence like the learning pathways and processes of kids, and a lot of that got sucked out along the way. And so it's really nice to hear that that's kind of what compelled you to start a lot of your work there. What were, I think, we'd be curious to know, what were some of the, if you could identify a few, some of the biggest obstacles or hiccups you encountered when you really pushed beyond that half an hour of science reading?
Well, once we had a superintendent in place who was supportive of this work, then it became the space. So fortunate enough to have a superintendent who said, yes, this sounds like a great idea, go for it. And then eventually found a principal who said, yes, you can use this classroom. It was not in great shape. So I took care of the space. I decided that I would, once I came across the other obstacle of not having necessarily quick turnaround with personnel and support, that I would paint the walls myself. I would lay the foam on the floor myself, because that was the only way that this was going to happen in this year. And I really wanted to be able to capitalize on the interest that our superintendent and that the community had shown. So space was definitely the first obstacle, and then the support to build out the space was another. Once we moved past that and I actually had the space open, it was actually a hesitance of the students, a lot of the older students especially, to get started exploring, coming into the space, feeling comfortable, not being told what to do. So that was a really huge thing to tackle, because I had anticipated all of the challenges with some adults who might feel like this is, where does this belong in our schools, or this is not how we do things. But I hadn't fully anticipated that there would be kind of this, not necessarily pushback, but this unknowingness from the kids to not know where to start.
That's super interesting. What kind of, I don't know, I don't know if it's trial and error, or if you redesigned kind of the learning environment or learning experience to really allow those kids to make a decision, try something new, make a choice on their own without fear or hesitation. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, well, so the first thing that I tried was I laid out kind of like tape guidelines along the floor of, if you want to go to coding, go over to that corner of the room. If you are interested in designing with cardboard, go to that corner of the room. And actually, that went through a couple of iterations before I realized that it was really the pictures and the graphics that I needed to have in place to get them not only to understand what the things were that maybe they hadn't experienced before, but also to have some sort of concept of what they could do in that space.
Cool. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I remember those drawings on the floor. They were awesome. And it was a really neat way to really orient within the space too, because I also recall that you spent many a Saturday painting the space yourself. And in visiting you as part of our open portfolio project and just some of the other work that we were doing, it was really neat to see how you were able to use visuals and graphics to help students get familiar and comfortable in the space. I think that's really key, because otherwise, you're right, it might be really intimidating to them.
Yeah.
I want to take a step back because you kind of glossed over this, but I think there's probably a lot more work involved than you're admitting to. So take credit for it. You had mentioned that, it was surprising to you that students didn't necessarily jump in feet first or head first. And that you were, one of the big challenges that you came across was, getting the space and getting it ready. And you had mentioned that you were fortunate enough to have administration, both a superintendent and a principal, who were on board and excited. Did you have to do any work related to that whatsoever in terms of making the case or presenting why this was important and compelling for the district?
Yes.
What did that look like?
Well, so I mean, there was a varied amount of work that had to go into it. Part of it was showing some of the things that I had done in the past in my second grade classroom. Some of it was presenting things that had happened nearby. So Erin Vanderwerf in Oakland and Angie in Castellea. So showing that this was somewhere where education was heading, or in some cases was already there. So that was part of the interest, or what got our superintendent interested. What it was for the principal was I actually ran a little kind of mini design thinking, or like a prototype of the pilot I brought in 5 students. They all happened to be girls who were in about 3rd or 4th grade, which ended up in the end being pretty incredible, because then the space actually was most anticipated by those girls and their friends. So it was actually a very gender balanced room compared to what it could have been or what I've seen in the past. But so I ran this little pilot. It was actually, I want to say it was October 31st, 2013. Because I know it was on Halloween, because the girls came in and had just changed their costumes. One of them still had blood from being a vampire on her face. But so I had a few I had 3 computers that I had from my classroom, old computers set up with, I believe it was Tinkercad. I had a set of Legos, and I had a robot. I just went and bought one robot. That was the investment I had made of about $100. And I had video cameras, old flip cameras set up, and I recorded them. After they experienced this, I asked them to write on some Post-its their ideas, what they wanted to see in the space, what they would be interested if this was anything that they enjoyed at all. And wouldn't you know, they loved it. And I was able to take that video and not only show that the principal that there was an interest and need, but then I was able to take that back to the superintendent and show her. And it really just kind of started to spin forward from there, because the excitement that these kids had shown was doubled, tripled when all of the students came in. So then other principals, I had hoped to kind of open up each makerspace every 6 months. So we had 7 makerspaces. You know, we might be getting to one of the last ones now if we'd opened up on our 6-month trajectory that I'd put. But they all came after we had an open house and invited parents and the community in to see this. They all said, we want this in our space. Why can't we have this now? So that really pushed the development. But it was really showing that kids were already interested, that they were already ready to dive in. So showing that incredible need led to pretty quick acceptance that, yes, this is somewhere we can try. This is what we can do this.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Those are some
insights too, because I feel like
I also feel like you pointed out 3 really big things. One was in making the case, you were showing examples of what others were already doing and the successes they were having and the energy and inspiration that was being developed there. So really bringing in some of your community of peers to help you make the case based on kind of building on the foundation that they may have started. I think another thing you mentioned that I thought was really compelling was that you, from the very beginning, documented a lot of the work that you were doing with your kids and used them almost as a proof case, which is really ultimately our ultimate beneficiary is the youth, right? So if they're excited, hopefully we're doing something right. And then bringing in the parents. I think a lot of us, for better or for worse, forget that they're a very crucial component of any school, community, and broader beyond that. And so they can help us really not just make the case, but bring forth the energy and the support to make things happen and happen quickly, like you mentioned.
Yeah, incredibly quickly. Yeah, yeah, and that was definitely something to that kind of is definitely a learning. It's something that I had not anticipated, was that by going through this pilot, getting the kids excited, they wanted to bring their parents in, which got other teachers coming in, then led to nearby schools and districts coming in to see what we were doing, which then when other people are coming in and saying, this is something great you're doing, then everybody in the administration level gets pretty excited and says, yes, let's keep going with this.
Totally. And you guys are, right? Ravenswood has really, I think, become a really neat and phenomenal model of how this can happen, starting with one school, but really growing amongst all of its schools. I think we've seen in public school systems that it has started with one school, but sometimes just stays there. And Ravenswood is a great example of it, not just being siloed at one specific location or one specific campus, which is awesome. I did have another question. For those who aren't familiar, Robert, can you describe a little bit about Ravenswood as a district and the students that you were serving there?
Oh, yes. Perhaps I could have done that in the beginning, but so Ravenswood's in East Palo Alto. It is on the other side of the creek from Palo Alto, and in many ways is that. So students are about 99% free and reduced lunch, and it is 80% Hispanic and about 10% African American, 10% Pacific Islander. And so going back to that focus on testing, we were for a number of years watched by the state and the county to make sure that we were teaching according to the curriculum that was in front of us, because of the what had been consistently low performance across the schools.
That's super interesting. And do you think any of the either challenges or successes that you encountered were specific to the fact that you were working with this particular student population, or with a community across the creek from Palo Alto, or just generally with Title I schools?
Yeah, I would say at first the idea that we had to put in a space into the school where kids could be creative was something different. I student taught in Palo Alto and then also in Mountain View, both nearby. Both not necessarily high income, but higher income than in Ravenswood. And the amount of opportunities for students to create in the classroom were just endless. And so having to, or feeling like there was a need to create a specific room for it, definitely felt specific to us, but I've definitely seen now that it's not specific to us, that this was happening everywhere. But there definitely was something that I didn't talk about, was kind of how we secured the stuff that we got. And that definitely was something that's specific to Title I schools, and the amount of kind of restriction that we had on our funding. Through that, I was actually able to work with nearby businesses to receive donated furniture, as well as donated computers that were not being used anymore.
Yeah, that's huge. Absolutely. I'm super curious, since those early days of 2013, what has your view or perspective or hopes and dreams of making an education changed at all, or evolved at all?
Yeah, well, and I was thinking about this, just on my drive home. And I was thinking that, like, I don't think my view necessarily of making has changed. Like, I have consistently thought, and I think it's because of how I was raised, that making can go from woodworking as a 6-year-old just with a hammer, nails, and a couple of pieces of wood, to sewing, to like incredible like drawings and graffiti art. But the thing that I have realized is that it's not enough just to have that view, that you need to be explicitly sharing that with students, and the broader community. And that really, to me, comes out in the projects that you're encouraging amongst your students, what is considered a good project or not, the guest speakers that you bring in, especially, in Ravenswood, we have so many parents who are makers themselves, and getting them into the classroom and getting them to be able to share their stories. And that not only helps the kids see, oh my gosh, like the stuff I'm doing in here connects to my parents, but it also gives them an even more sense of respect and excitement about the work that their parents are doing, that it is appreciated and recognized in school. And then also just kind of the praise that you're giving making in the real world. So what we recognize as making is not just kind of like the little, doodads with electronics that I just worked on for our cat's Halloween costume, but is also, the like I said, the incredible graffiti art, or the lowriders that you see driving through the mission. Like all of that takes so much incredible making work, and we should be recognizing all of that.
That's awesome. I think that's huge, and a really good, clear statement about how making stems from all areas of different cultures, backgrounds, work styles, careers, and how we can draw inspiration and learning and skills from all of them. And that serves our students all in the best sorts of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Neat. Well, I think one of the other things that we like to conclude on, only because we want to, not that we're concluding necessarily, but I want to be cognizant of time, is if you have any either words of wisdom or strongly recommended suggestions that you would provide to other educators or administrators who are interested in either starting or deepening their maker education programs broadly, but also maybe specifically in Title I schools?
Yeah, well, so my first recommendation is something that we talked about a little bit earlier, which is looking at and learning from those who have traversed the path before us. Whether that's from going to visit schools where this is being done, to reading some of the research that's been done in equity by some incredible scholars like Paula Hooper. I have a couple of books here. I have Invent to Learn and the Youth Makerspace Playbook that are both really incredible resources to get yourself started in thinking about it. And I mean, beyond that, I would encourage anybody who's considering doing this, both to try it out for themselves, both try to be a maker, but just also offer opportunities for kids to make. And that doesn't mean, like I said, it doesn't have to be electronics or 3D printing. It can be cardboard. It can be, I mean, I love the make-do cardboard construction, but even without that, just duct tape and cardboard, you can do so much with. And if you try to take on making yourself and show the kids that you are willing to try, and especially that you're willing to try alongside them, not only are they going to be more excited and give more buy-in, but everybody's going to be more on board, and they'll also be a little bit more forgiving. You know, when people saw that, oh, Robert is not only encouraging this making in Los Robles, but he is actively like putting his time into creating the space and learning how these things work, and then everybody was a little bit more forgiving about the time that it took, or that, you know, everything wasn't necessarily polished when they came in. And through that, I would say it's about just trying, because just giving kids the opportunity, I mean, I think anybody would be surprised, shocked of how quickly kids can get into creating some amazing projects.
Awesome. Do you have a favorite project that you talk about or highlight?
My favorite project is, I mean, it's a little project. It's so there was a girl who had went to PetSmart and wanted to get a dog tag for her dog, but the machine at PetSmart was broken. And so she actually came into our space. She created a dog tag in Tinkercad and went through all of the printing and practice until she had finally a, you know, good solid name tag that she was happy with, that she was able to then go home and you know, put on her dog's collar that she was proud of.
I love that. And that's so personal to her too, her and her dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. And we're super curious, what are you up to now?
Oh, well, like I said, I've started this consulting with empowerment, working with a number of different schools. I'm especially really excited about my work with San Mateo County Office of Ed right now. And it feels kind of cheesy but it's definitely not. That, like, one of the things that I'm most excited about is a partnership with Maker Ed and Google and the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh in creating more maker spaces in our county and supporting the effort across the nation. And that's really exciting to me, in part because that was something that we wanted to do from the county, but also because it's something that we're going to be going on a journey together. There's going to be 10 schools who we are working with to forge this path in creating their maker spaces. And that is incredible to me because I've been through a few other consulting opportunities where I realized I wasn't really needed in the room because so much of the content was already held by the people who are there. And I think that's really true about bringing making into the classrooms and into the schools, is that it's not really that new. We are bringing back the creativity and imagination that we all had and we all embraced in preschool and kindergarten, and just allowing that to see where that can take us.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for mentioning that. I mean, we are really lucky and excited to have you and San Mateo County Office of Education as a partner too. And Robert is talking about Making Spaces, which is a new program that we recently launched in the fall. If you're interested, reach out to us and we'll let you know more about it. And Maker Ed is actually acting as a virtual hub. So if there are schools who are interested in developing things out and don't necessarily have a hub next to them, we're available as well to support. Robert, thank you for your time so much. I want to call out a couple of the resources that you mentioned. You had held up Invent to Learn, which is a phenomenal book to check out. He's holding it up again. Yay! He also held up the Youth Maker Space Playbook, which happens to be written by Maker Ed. Woo! He also mentioned the Make Do construction kit, but also just generally cardboard and tape and easily accessible, low-cost recycled materials. I want to throw out there some of the huge work that he's done is also captured at the Ravenswood Makerspace Collaborative.com website. So check that out as well. And I believe we are out of time. But thanks again, Robert. It was really, really wonderful to talk with you. And I hope you get pinged by lots of other educators around the nation who are excited to work with you too.
All right. Well, thank you. I hope it doesn't happen until at least Game 7 is over. I've got my Cubs hat. I just was in Chicago. So I'm really excited to root for them tonight.
Awesome. So you won't hear back from Robert for a little while at least. Very cool. Well, thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie.
Bye.
Bye.